An officer thought he was keeping order when he ordered an elderly black man to wait outside the courthouse in the heat. But when the truth came out, that the man he dismissed was the judge presiding over the very cases inside, the entire room froze. The courthouse steps buzzed with the usual mix of lawyers clutching their briefcases, defendants nervously smoking cigarettes, and families waiting anxiously for updates. The morning sun pressed down hard, and the air was already heavy with heat. At the top of the steps, just outside the main entrance, a police officer stood guard. His uniform was crisp, his arms folded, his eyes scanning the crowd like a man who thought he could size people up with a single glance. Down the sidewalk came an elderly man, walking with slow but steady steps. He wore a simple dark suit, his shoes polished but scuffed at the edges from years of use. His gray hair was neatly combed back, and in one hand he carried a worn leather briefcase, the kind that looked older than some of the lawyers rushing by. He wasn't flashy. He didn't demand attention. He carried himself with quiet dignity, but not the kind that demanded recognition. He was used to being overlooked, and sometimes, that's exactly what he wanted. His name was Charles Hammond. To those who knew him, he wasn't just respected, he was revered. He had spent a lifetime serving the law, working his way from a struggling public defender to one of the most respected judges in the state. For decades, he had presided over high-profile cases with wisdom and fairness, earning the admiration of colleagues and the quiet gratitude of communities who rarely saw justice done. But to the officer at the door, Charles was just another old man making his way up the courthouse steps. "Sir," the officer said sharply as Charles approached. "You'll need to wait outside." Charles stopped, lifting his eyes toward the young man in uniform. His voice was low, calm, and patient. "I have business inside." The officer shifted, his jaw tightening. "The lobby's too crowded already. We're only letting attorneys and court officials in right now." Charles tilted his head slightly, his gaze steady but not confrontational. "And what makes you think I am not either of those?" The officer let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Because I've been standing here all morning, and I can tell you don't fit the part. Now, please step aside. You can wait with the rest." He gestured toward a small group of people standing in the sun, sweating, fanning themselves with folded papers. The courthouse doors opened, and two attorneys in tailored suits breezed past the officer without a word. Charles glanced at them, then back at the officer. His expression didn't change, but his voice grew a shade firmer. "Young man, I suggest you look a little closer at the people you're dismissing." But the officer only smirked, folding his arms again. "Look, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. You can go stand over there." By now, a few onlookers had noticed the exchange. A woman whispered to her companion, "He doesn't know who that is." Another man shook his head slowly, muttering, "This won't end well." Charles sighed softly, as though disappointed but not surprised. He took a slow step forward, his presence quiet yet commanding. "Son, I have walked through these doors more times than you've stood in front of them. I have upheld justice in this very building for longer than you've worn that uniform. And today, I am scheduled to preside over a docket that begins in 15 minutes. So I will ask you one more time, are you going to step aside, or are you going to delay the court of law itself?" The officer blinked, confusion breaking through his arrogance. "Preside? What do you mean, preside?" Before Charles could answer, another voice cut in from inside the doors. A clerk, carrying a stack of files, stopped dead in his tracks when he saw who was standing outside. His eyes widened, and his face drained of color. "Judge Hammond!" he gasped. "Sir, I didn't realize you were out here. They've been waiting for you inside." The crowd stirred, whispers spreading like ripples in water. The officer's mouth fell open as the weight of his mistake crashed down on him. Judge. The man he had ordered to wait outside in the sun wasn't just a visitor. He was the one who would be sitting on the bench that morning, commanding the very authority the officer thought he had. Charles didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice. He simply straightened his shoulders, stepped past the stunned officer, and walked inside with the same quiet dignity he had carried from the beginning. But as he passed, He paused just long enough to let his words land. "Young man," he said evenly, "respect is not something you give based on appearances. It is something you owe to every person who walks through these doors. Remember that. Because one day, you'll be judged on it." The officer stood frozen, shame burning through his uniform as murmurs swirled around him. Some people shook their heads, others smirked knowingly, and a few even clapped softly as Judge Hammond disappeared into the building. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with activity, but the moment Judge Hammond entered, the noise quieted instantly. Lawyers stood, clerks straightened their files, and the room fell into respectful silence. The same man who had just been dismissed as an ordinary old man outside was now the most powerful presence in the room. And outside, the officer remained on the steps, realizing that in a single moment, he had learned a lesson that no training manual could ever teach. Never underestimate the quiet dignity of the people you think you know. If this story struck you, if it made you pause and think about respect, judgment, and the hidden weight people carry, don't let it stop here. Share it, so others hear it too. And if you want more gripping, cinematic stories like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. These stories matter, and your support helps them reach the world.